Recording in progress.
So welcome everyone to our weekly call. Glad you could join, for those of you that are on live rather than watching the recording. This week I'm going to sort of briefly just run through some sort of key agenda items on the sort of number of events. So OARC 39 and RIPE 85 coming up next week, or this weekend for OARC 39, right next week for RIPE 85. NANOG 86 starts today in Hollywood. So, but I thought it was worth just putting out a couple of things there because remote attendance is possible. At roughly past, Chris Box will be joining us, and we'll be coming on to talk about network collaboration using path signals, which he can explain when he joins. And time permitting, I will also briefly pick up on a few recent developments, etc. If Chris is on slightly later, I may do those first. So we'll just adjust the agenda to fit with Chris joining the call. So do bear with me on that. So without further ado, I thought it would be useful to sort of signpost some of the more interesting looking talks that are coming up at OARC 39, which starts on Saturday lunchtime and sort of runs through till Sunday in Belgrade. It's the first half day, so Saturday morning is a centre technical workshop. I've not seen the agenda for that, so I don't know what's on it. I won't sort of drill down into any particular highlights of that, but I'll tell you what's coming up next. So I've pulled out these things. These are topics which just caught my eye going through the various agendas, just to be clear. So some of these might seem a bit arbitrary, so apologies in advance if they do. But the ones I've sort of called out, they're all on this slide. Firstly, Jefferson is reprising his presentation on the resolverless DNS, which he sort of touched on this call a few weeks ago now. So if you're interested in that, you can actually get at least a preview. No doubt he's updated it since, but you'll get the gist of what Jeff's going to cover. You look at the call recording, which should be accessible on our website, but that's what he'll be sort of talking about on Saturday. After that, there's a presentation which I thought was actually looked really rather interesting, which is introducing the intentionally broken DNS server, which, if I understood the concept correctly, is a server which can be configured to introduce various errors to enable you to test your DNS software in different ways. So I believe it's quite configurable. So it's not a concept I'd seen previously, so it certainly caught my attention, which you'll see Mark van der Weyl of AFNIC is presenting at OARC. And then after that, we got the observable kindness validating DNS hygiene, which Raphael is talking about, but sort of basically sort of focusing on sort of best practices, including taking a look at DNS measurement studies and available data sets. So I thought that's certainly something I'll be looking out for during OARC at the weekend. There's a particularly fine looking presentation after that on looking at the potential impact of encrypted client hello on public and private network operators and others, which I think is going to be probably the outstanding highlight of the whole of OARC, but I might be biased as I'm presenting it. So as you can see, that's focusing on ECH and some of its impacts, just to really start the conversation. So I'll be sort of running through that on Sunday. And then the other one which caught my eye from a number of, there's a good number of pretty interesting looking talks. So this is very much a short list of those, is addressing DNSSEC deployment risk, which Victor is presenting. I think that's the latter part of Sunday, if I recall, trying to identify ways of lowering of DNSSEC, what some of the issues are preventing adoption of it. And that's really the things which I thought were worth calling out. You can attend OARC 39 remotely, and it's still, at least it was this morning, possible to register. When I checked sort of lunchtime, 101 people were already registered at that point, so it looked like it was going to be a good number of us, either present in person or remotely, but still open for additional registration if anyone finds himself with the time available this weekend to do so. As I say, it's Saturday afternoon and Sunday. That's UTC +2 time zone, as it's in Serbia. So before I move on, anyone got anything to say on that? Or anyone else that's going that perhaps thinks I've missed anything particularly fundamental that is worth mentioning? I'll take silence as not, and therefore we'll move on. Okay, so moving on to RIPE 85, which starts this coming Monday. I've only pulled out three topics from there, because obviously the subject matter is quite wide-ranging, well beyond purely DNS matters, as you would expect. So from there, I've just because it appealed, it was quite a good topic. So again, Jeff Houston from APNEC is presenting a quick look at Quick. So I'm sure that will be data rich, because it always is when Jeff gives a presentation, and that would be a good start to the week. So I think it's pretty early on the agenda for RIPE. I think probably a couple of days or so later, there's use cases for the quantum internet, which not all the slides are uploaded yet, so I'm not sure exactly in any more detail what Peter's presenting, but that's certainly an intriguing presentation, which I'll definitely be going along to see. But then the main one from a sort of DNS point of view, unsurprisingly, is RIPE's DNS working group, which takes place next Thursday. That's Thursday 27th, between 11 and 12:30 UTC +2. And you can see there a number of topics: DNS privacy with speed, looking at the performance of DOQ, and comparing it with various other encrypted and unencrypted protocols, which sort of Luca Schumann is presenting. There's a number of co-authors of the paper, including sort of Mike Kusech, who's sort of presented on this call on this topic previously. So this is an updated version of that paper. After that, as a presentation on fewer name servers and more addresses, which Dave Knight is presenting. Then measuring encrypted DNS censorship using the UNI probes. Again, we've had presentation on that topic on this call previously, but from Nguyen, so not based on the same paper, but so this is a sort of based on another paper, but sort of similar subject matter. And then finally, a presentation by Balint on Meta's DNS server, which I'm sure again will be pretty interesting given the sheer scale of Meta's infrastructure. So that's I think in the space of an hour and a half, that's pretty content rich, as there's a couple of other agenda items as well, more administrative, which are on the agenda. So if you can't make the whole of the RIPE meeting but have time to attend remotely, I definitely would say that the DNS working group will be well worth investing an hour and a half of your time if you can spare it next Thursday. Has the audio gone for others? I can see in the chat. Hi, can you hear me again, everyone?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Apologies for that. I have no idea what happened there. It just suddenly dropped out for no apparent reason. Right. Let me reshare my screen even. Sorry, not that one. Let me just try that again and then see if I can pick up from where I left off. Right, can you see the slides again? Hopefully you can. And yes, I will stop sharing ECH. That's clearly what the problem was, Arno. Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, I was just concluding that the content of the DNS working group is pretty rich. So if you're not going to be attending the whole of the RIPE meeting, it will be, in my view, definitely well worth simply joining on Thursday for that hour and a half if you can, because there's some pretty good content on there. As you can see from the slide. I think, if I'm honest, there's so much good content, it's going to be interesting to see if it's feasible to present all of that, plus some administrative matters in an hour and a half. But if they can do it, that will be very admirable, in my view. And then just quickly, I had a quick look at NANOG 86, which, as I mentioned earlier, is running, I think, today and for the next couple of days. Again, three things caught my eye from there. First is there's a whole, in fact, all of yesterday, there was a separate workshop on DNS fundamentals, which ran from 10 till 4, I recall, and see Vicky commenting in the chat that it was well attended, presumably recorded, so that will be well worth catching up on for many people, I'm sure, as and when the recording's available. The two other things caught my eye from the agenda through this week. Paul Vixie, previously of Farsight Security, now of AWS, is presenting a talk entitled Going Dark, Catastrophic Security and Privacy Losses Due to Loss of Visibility by Managed Private Networks. Knowing Paul, I'm sure that will be, again, extremely well argued, and a lot of technical depth to it, so well worth watching. And then you got Internet Evolution of Approaches at ITUT. Why should we care? So, given some of the discussions taking place over the last year or so in the ITU with regards to new IP, for example, again, I think that will be worth catching up with. Sorry, just answering a question in the chat as we're talking. Yeah, the RIPE timings are UTC +2, so 1100. So that's 1100 UTC +2, which is I can't remember what the time zone is called. Is that it's Eastern European time, whatever that time zone is called. I don't think
it's just CET. Just CET, I think, Andrew.
Is it? Okay.
So it's the same as the rest of Western Europe.
Is it? I thought that was +1. Oh no, sorry, we're +1, aren't we? Of course we are. Yeah. Sorry, I'm being a bit thick. It's been a long day. So yes, sorry, you're right. So it says CET then. For some reason, they put it in they put it as UTC +2. But anyway, So talking about NANOG 86. So those are the three sessions that just caught my eye, which I thought was just worth mentioning. Again, for those of you that are going to any of OARC, RIPE or NANOG, anything else that you think is worth highlighting? And I'll just quickly wind back on the slide so you can see the OARC ones first. Anything that sort of fundamentally think I've missed that is worth talking, just calling out? So that's for OARC. We just change the slide so you can see again for RIPE.
Yeah, Andrew, I raised my hand just in case.
Sorry, Arno, did you want to come in?
Yeah, so thank you for the update. That's very important. I think as well, I've noticed that ECH is back in draft 15. I saw draft 15 was issued last week, probably. And as well, Simon here and myself and Hossein were the three of us together at ITV Plenipotentiary last week. And it had been extraordinarily painful. So yeah, I think it's good that Hossein can speak here. And finally, a very interesting slide deck from Paul. Maybe we can ask him if he wants to turn some of his content back to your draft for ITF 115.
Sure. Okay, well, let's briefly move on to that then. So if anyone didn't catch that, in fact, let me stop sharing for a moment. So just to sort of reiterate that, the ECH draft had expired, draft 14, but draft 15 has now been issued. Yeah, as you say, it was a week or so ago, I think, Arno, when that came out. So it is now sort of live again. So I presume that was just an oversight. Somebody missed the fact that the draft was about to expire. The cutoff is coming up quite soon for ITF 115. So I know a couple of us have spoken about combining an updated version of the draft that I presented in Vienna with the draft that Arno presented during the Lightning RFC session in Philadelphia. So we have a single sort of coherent ECH related document to present in London, and obviously bringing both of those up to date as we combine them. At least that's the current plan. What did I miss from what you said on that before we go into the Plenipot?
Yeah, so in fact, one thing that surprised me is a comment from a guy from Freeway about your draft from Vienna in Sec Dispatch, with the concept of trusted middle boxes that started to pop up, and not just here. So I was very surprised. We will discuss that offline. And the last piece is the point that Hossein, Simon Hicks and I suffered plenipotentiary for 10 days, and it had been frankly unpleasant.
Yes,
so I think so I think it's good that Hossein is making an intervention.
Yes, because I think that from what I could gather from reading various sort of comments, mainly people's Twitter feeds, the meeting that you attended was quite intense, as well as overrunning significantly, but by many days in order to get to a conclusion on the very many bits of input that people had on the various sort of sort of points of discussion which seem to run for a long time.
Well, I think it was worse back in Dubai 4 years ago in terms of time, because we had full nights taken to debate and negotiate by exhaustion. This time we could not, because the Ceausescu Palace would stop at 9 p.m. So we had a timeout apart from one evening or 2 evenings. But clearly the tension due to Ukraine versus Russia was one part of the problem. The second is that some groups of countries lost a lot of things, especially the Arab group. US has been the big winner of the whole plenipotentiary. And as retaliation, I think that a number of very difficult conversations happen on internet resolutions, on security resolutions, on governance, and we lost the industry engagement resolution.
Right. So quite an ordeal for everyone, really, to be negotiating on those for such an extended period, one way or another. So in terms of the ECH draft, just coming back to that for a moment, I think the target is we have to get any documents for the IETF 115 have to be lodged by next Monday. That's the cutoff for IETF 115. So and anyone that wants to be involved in contributing to that document, I know we're planning to have a call later on this week, but if you're not already, if you haven't already had an invite for that, maybe reach out to me or Arno separately, and we'll set up a call. Is it on Thursday, Arno? I think. I haven't got my diary open in front of me at the moment, but so if anyone else that hasn't been invited wishes to be involved with that, so Wednesday, not Thursday.
Yep.
Yeah, reach out to me or Arno separately, and we can sort that out. But yeah, we will have it'll be a very short, focused piece of work to consolidate the text into a single draft and have that ready to issue for next Monday by the deadline. And on that point, it's particularly good timing for, I see Chris has just popped up on my screen. So that's particularly good timing. So let's stop talking about that there for a moment. Just by way of a reminder, as I said at the start, I'll reshare my screen to put the agenda back. So Chris had kindly agreed, probably in a moment of weakness, he sort of put a post up about network collaboration using path signals, which I think was in response, was it to one of the IAB papers? I can't quite remember now what prompted that, Chris. It was about a month ago now.
Yes, it was, yeah.
But in my humble opinion, you made some very good points on there. So I thought it would be worth just airing some of those, because I guess that some of that will come into the IAB workshop, which is running this week, I think virtually, in terms of on sort of encrypted networks and sort of managing those. But yeah, the M10 workshop. So we haven't got the minutes of that yet, as it's running now, answering the question in the chat. Oh no. So if anyone claims to have the minutes of the meeting already, that'd be slightly worrying. So Chris, sorry, let me hand over to you to just sort of talk through some of the points you made and then sort of broaden the discussion as you see fit.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So you got that?
Yep, that's
cool. Let's make it F5'd. Yeah, so this was a draft that the IAB have been working on for some time, and in August they put out a call for community consultation on it, because the model for their documents is normally that they work on it themselves and then only share it with the community at the end. So let's talk about what this actually is. So path signals collaboration is talking about path signals. You might think, what are they? Well, they are anything that is traveling in those packets on the wire that can be read and understood by an intermediary. So classically, those have been clear text things. Because they're clear text, they can be read easily by anybody, and they can also be generally modified by anybody. And as you know, the whole move to encryption means that those path signals, those clear text signals, are being removed, and that causes some impacts. So here I'm just presenting what the IAB say about this area. So they're saying that the current status quo encourages pervasive monitoring and can be used for commercial purposes or form basis for filtering. That's, as they say, the applications or users do not desire. But here's what's new, I think. So they recognize that a lack of all path signaling may be harmful to network management, debugging, or the ability for networks to provide the most efficient services. And I'd agree with that. And they go on to say this is sometimes seen as an adversarial trade-off between privacy and network functions. They don't think that's true. They think not all information passing implies a loss of privacy. And so they are proposing here a way for these network functions to be given some specific information about the traffic. And they then define some goals for this. So they say that any such information should be distributed intentionally and not accidentally. That they want to understand the privacy and other implications of distributing any such information. They want to ensure that the information distributed is limited to the intended parties, i.e. not sent to everybody. And they want to control and gate the sending of the information, i.e. only send it when the relevant parties agree to do so. So it all seems fairly sensible. This then evolves into some principles for sharing information. So they're listed here. So intentional is, as I said, only send it when the client wants to. Controlling the distribution implies that all endpoints must be identified and authenticated. They must use a secure channel to protect the information. Minimizing the information, so only sending the essential information for the purpose, nothing more, which is quite a contrast to the way the internet has been previously. And limiting impact, so if it is any denied access, it's only relevant to this network, not to all network. Sharing only with one or very few network entities, like the minimum number required, and having specific mechanisms. So designing a bespoke protocol for each specific use case. So that's what they said, and obviously there's more text in the document which you can go and read. So they opened a consultation. I was one of the two people to respond, the other was Vittorio. So what I said was, yeah, I support the aims and principles. It does seem to me to be a good way forward, because it's not great to have a complete absence of path signals. And I think the way they've described how signals should be shared seems reasonable. It seems to strike the right balance. Then I think my biggest issue that I state here is it's going to take the IETF many years to develop and deploy new protocols that follow these principles. You know, this is all assuming we agree these principles. How then do we make them happen for specific use cases? So that's going to take a lot of time. But all during that time, everybody's going to carry on in the current trend of hiding all these clear text signals. Yeah, we're seeing SNI being hidden over the next year or so. So this therefore implies, a few years of enforced blindness, of an enforced lack of signals before the new mechanisms are in place to permit that sharing. So I was suggesting, we should carefully consult before withdrawing each clear text signal that we currently have. And I was also suggesting we should work quickly on developing the new protocols. Now, I made that comment in August. Absolutely nothing has happened since then until 4 days ago. So, I mean, there's not been any comment on the architecture discuss list or even directly to me. But I had a look on the IAB's GitHub, which is where the path signals document is developed and updated. And lo and behold, 4 days ago, we have some answers. So yeah, they've been discussing it. They've been discussing my and Vittorio's comments, and they've been considering what they think of them. And this is what they've said about this point. So they're saying, yes, it is going to take a number of years. But they're saying essentially, tough luck, the clear text signals must be removed. I'm paraphrasing here, but you can see the exact wording for yourself. Essentially, I say take it this. They're saying they don't agree that the clear text signals should be kept during this development period because withdrawing them, they say, creates the incentive to deploy these new mechanisms. I mean, I don't entirely agree with that. I mean, I'd like to hear what others think. I mean, I would say surely we could declare someday in the future at which we agree, such and such clear text signal will be withdrawn, and therefore that creates the incentive. We all know in our own companies that we have to develop something to support the world beyond that date. And therefore we can work towards it, and therefore we avoid the gap in the middle. But that's where we are, and the IB can publish whatever they want to publish. How am I doing for time?
Yeah, you're good, Chris.
I think I'm good. Yeah. Shall I carry on with the rest of what I said, or do you want people to comment here?
Well, if people have got any comments, perhaps best if you put them in the chat as you go along. This is everyone, not Chris, obviously, and or raise your virtual hand if needed. And as I say that, I can see that Alistair has put a comment in there about trust and network providers not trusting clients. So there's the issue of whether the client software this is telling the truth in its path signal, I guess. Which is a fair point. I've also, just in case people haven't seen it, put a link in the chat to the IAB draft document, which I think Chris was commenting, or that stimulated your comments, Chris, just to explain that.
Okay, let me carry on then.
Carry on.
So what else did I say? Yeah, so they had a sentence in the draft about the impact of a lack of path signaling. So I then suggest, so they said it would be harmful to network management, debugging, and providing most efficient services. So I was saying, well, it's also harmful to other things. So I named service provision, security, traffic routing and content delivery optimization. They have considered that, and what have they added? So this is a paste from the GitHub. So we've got, they've simply said that it limits network management and the ability for networks to optimize their services. So I'm not convinced they're sold on all of the impacts that are created.
I guess contentious one there, Chris, being not wanting to acknowledge the possible security impact, I suspect.
Yeah, so maybe that's a fruitful thread for discussion of the future. Yeah, some more feedback that I said on the draft. So regarding the order of that the principles are listed in the document. So I said, yeah, thinking on behalf of the reader who has got to design a protocol to do something, I would prefer an order of principles that aligns with the thought process that you'd have to go through in order to arrive at the right answer in an efficient way. And I think that starts with defining the minimal information to be sent and who it needs to be sent to. And then you move on to consider how that should be achieved. So I proposed that order that's on screen there. The IAB looked at that and then said no. They like their order, fair enough. So something else they say in there is this document. So yeah, so they recommend that every time you design a protocol to send path signals, that it's essentially a bespoke design. Yeah, you start from scratch, you come up with some design, which is quite different to a lot of other good architectural principles, which is like you design some base protocol that is extensible and then you extend it to meet your particular needs. Here they're saying don't do that. They're saying don't make it extensible. It is surprising to hear them say that, but I think this comes down to the need to agree the extent of the information sharing risk. And if you have an extensible protocol, that can be an open-ended risk. So I was essentially agreeing with them there, but other people may have different viewpoints. I also suggested that there's possibly a missing principle. So they talk about, well, you saw the principles earlier. They didn't say anything about how the packets comprising a flow, i.e. like a TCP connection or a quick connection, how, from the point of view of an endpoint, how do you know which packet belongs to which flow? So normally the classic way is by 5-tuple, so source, destination, port, and address. That is weakening. And if you're using a mask, like private relay or similar, that is destroyed entirely. So I was wondering whether it would be useful to articulate a general principle that designers of protocols can draw on in this area. So they've looked at that and they've said, knowing which packets are what part of which flow is a path signal. And therefore they say it has to be protocol specific analysis. So they're saying essentially there is no generic principle.
That's why you were talking, yep. Tommy, in the chat. So I think essentially agree with you about non-extensibility by design is a pro-privacy approach that limits later abuse. or either prevents or at least limits later abuse. So just agreeing with your earlier point.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I also thought about, okay, this is some broad high level principles. How might we actually use that in practice? So as a thought experiment, I applied it to a zero rating use case. So I used an example in the E network. So we sell a video data pass, and if you buy that pass, that means that any data you consume for a particular defined set of video services is free, as in you don't get charged for it. It's not, or it doesn't come out of your normal data bundle. So in order to implement that using path signals, the network needs to be sure that the packets that claim to be in scope are genuinely in scope and are not being fraudulently claimed. That's tricky. So in the thought experiment, I just limited it to the naive approach where the network assumes that whatever the client claims is video is true. Now, if I think about that zero rating case, how would I do that? How would I map that to the principles? So in terms of minimizing information, all I need to know as an endpoint, as a network endpoint that's doing charging, I just need to know, is this particular packet in scope of network products, whatever it is? And the answer is yes or no. I don't need to know if this packet is Netflix. That would be unnecessary information. So for this use case, I just need to know, is it in scope of this network product? If instead we had a signal that said this packet should be free, that's too little information. So in terms of limiting impact of information, well, the network needs to use this in deciding to which bucket this packet size should be counted. The entities, the first entity is the client device, which has knowledge of the app being used. And the second entity is the access network provider, who carries the packets and charges the end user. The intentional distribution, it's kind of implied by the purchase of the product, but maybe it would benefit from a user interface prompt to confirm this is still desired. Now, controlling the distribution of the information, the sender needs to agree to send it. The sender needs to authenticate to whom it is revealing this information. The receiver needs to agree to receive it, and the receiver needs the same level of confidence in end user identity that it already has in order to charge the end user. Now, in terms of protecting information, the information should be delivered intact, not revealed to other entities. So that means you need an encrypted channel. Well, specifically authenticated, integrity protected, and public. I think I should have said encrypted, but I can't see that I've used that. Now, in terms of carrying information, we need to define some protocol that delivers the above and no more. So in principle, that lot should work. So that was my response. Vittorio also responded, and this is what he said on the list. So he's supporting the effort. By the way, is Vittorio on this call?
He is not today, no.
Oh, okay. So I'll let you read what he said. So he noticed some vagueness around consent, asking who is the sender? The IAB has considered this, and this is what they say. So they've now said the sender should have an option to decide that it wants to send the information to a specific entity or set of entities. And the recipient should have the option to agree or deny to receive the information. Vittorio said a bit more. So he said, I'll let you read that. So yeah, he said something that he's not sure is in scope, and the IB said yes, it's out of scope. So that was it, really. So yeah, fire away the questions, and maybe I should open the chat.
Perfect timing, Chris. So anyone got any questions on that, or any additional comments other than those that we sort of called out from the chat as Chris was talking? And if so, feel free either to post more in the chat or raise your virtual hand, whichever is easier. See a question from Alistair: how would any client support this, because the data needs are specific to a given network implementation and service offering? And any thoughts on that? Slightly outside of the scope of what you were commenting, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. That you're welcome to share them if you do.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, this is an area where we just need to brainstorm how on earth could all this happen. So yeah, maybe the phone does some sort of discovery to the network, and then the network says, I have these services available that your user might want to take advantage of, and maybe there's a way to communicate exactly what those services are. So, yeah, so there's a 0 rating of video pass, there's a filtering of malware, there's a parental controls. That latter one is interesting, particularly because the person who applied the parental controls might not be the person using the device. But putting that to one side for a moment, yeah, so I guess there's some way to discover the network services, and then some means to look at the detail of that, and then I guess there's got to be a decision in the client software as to whether to take those up, and sometimes that might require user confirmation, and sometimes it might not. It all depends. And there's, what I can say is, between here and there's a lot of talking needed at the ITF.
And it's possible that that's a topic that might be covered in the workshop, I guess. But yeah. Oh no, you see, you've got your hand raised. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, in fact, as I remember, this is Mirya and Jarko that have proposed that signaling path, right, Chris?
So they are authors of Path Signal Collaboration, yes.
It was Jerry and Mirya. So I mean,
it's not just them, but yeah.
And Tommy Pauly and Ted Hardy. I've just looked at the document.
So is it because Mirya has worked on Scion that she's proposing something, that they are proposing something like this?
I don't know.
Because when you explain that the provider would need to explain to share what it can offer, and the client could take a decision and pick what it really.
Have you dropped out? Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's on a train, which you probably didn't realise, Chris. As you.
Okay. If only we had 100% mobile coverage.
He's not in this country, so you're off the hook on that one. Okay, well, Arno might come back on that. But anyone else with any comments or questions? Now's your chance before we move on. Lost in Switzerland, so yeah, probably just not got enough bandwidth for audio at the moment. Okay. I'm not seeing anything else, Chris. So I think there's got a lot of food for thought there, and certainly worth keeping tabs, I guess, on the discussions at the IAB workshop through this week. Assuming I think it's every day this week. The plan was to have the virtual workshop covering different aspects of the discussion. So be interested to see what other ground it covers through the week.
Indeed.
All right. Well, thank you for that. That's much appreciated. Right, we've got a couple of minutes left, so I will briefly just touch on a couple of other things whilst we have time. Let me just briefly step back through these again. I have to update my slide animation. So I got rid of those. Right, so just quickly, a couple of other things in the news. I won't go through all of these, but a paper has been published relatively recently on which is one of the topics being covered in the RIPE DNS working group sort of discussion as well. It's worth a look. Again, it's looking at how DNS over QUIC compares with other encrypted and unencrypted DNS protocols. So I think that's worth a look if you have time. There's also a recent example of another malware. So another piece of malware using DOE for its command and control. And interesting piece on blocking of traffic in Iran, but even though it's blocking encrypted DNS, some of the other more specialist tools like Tor, Psion, etc., are still working for distance, or at least they were a few days ago when Mallory and others contributed to the article. Finally, at the bottom, just I mentioned this earlier, a reminder that next Monday is the cutoff, 23:59 UTC, for both submissions, internet draft submissions, but also for the standard rate for IETF 115. So if you're planning to attend and haven't registered yet, it's worth doing so before midnight Monday UTC time. When I last looked, I think there was about 600 or so people planning to attend in person, and I think about 300 odd already registered to attend online. So looking like quite good numbers. I think that should mean we have a similar number in person to Philadelphia, which was a sort of good number for discussion.
Just the last one there, please. Was your UK spy chief the right reference? Because I thought it was a speech out of Russia, which is also available on YouTube, but that looks like a reference to the European Commission website.
That's a good point. Somehow that's the wrong link that's crept in there. I will update that. Simon, well spotted. No idea how that happened.
That's a bit strange.
Well spotted. It shows that someone was paying attention. That's really helpful. Right, just a quick reminder. There's been an event running today, running also tomorrow. It's the Internet Governance program, a running event in The Hague. As I say, today and tomorrow, covering quite a wide range of policy-related issues for those of you who have a policy interest. I mentioned NANOG and the IAB workshop running this week. Obviously, we've got OARC and then RIPE coming up, and also so a new thing which I've just added to the list is the EU's high-level group for internet governance, which has got a half-day meeting on 24th November coming up. The agenda's not available for that yet, but they put out a hold the date. It's for the morning European time of that. Oh, sorry, just a bit too quick. And you've got also a reminder, end of this month, if you want to put anything in as sort of potential for Eurodig, then you've got till the end of the month, the next couple of weeks, to do so. And I think, yeah, We don't have a call next week because I will be in Belgrade for RIPE. So just a reminder not to dial in next week. Week after, we'll sort of pick up on, sort of do a preview of ITF 115, the agenda for which was published, or the final agenda was published on Friday. So we call out some of the items on there and any highlights from OARC and RIPE that are noteworthy. We'll just call out those then. And then the week after, of course, we've got ITF 115. So again, we won't have a call then. And then you can see what else we've got coming up. So we're just on the hour, so we're pretty much out of time. But if anyone has anything you want to raise in the last sort of 30 seconds, now's your chance. So if you do, please just quickly unmute and call out. Probably will be most time efficient. I'm not seeing anyone doing that. I don't think I've missed anything else in the chat. Right, well, in which case, let's call a halt there. Say thanks, everyone, for your time. Have a fantastic week. As I say, we won't have a call next week, but if you're in Belgrade for either OARC and or RIPE 85, I'll see you there. Otherwise, speak to you in 2 weeks' time. So have a great week, everyone. Thanks all for your time.
Cheers. Right.